First, with the African story globally, we are Channel Africa, and we take a look at this story now. In a few weeks, Channel Africa will be launching a new and exciting project. It's called Africa Matters. One of the aims of the project is to tell African stories from an African perspective by highlighting some of the continent's successes and challenges. This year's focus is on climate change and how Africa can finance itself in the mitigation of the effects of climate change. As we count down to the main event, we're joined now in studio by Channel Africa's business manager, Mr. Dicksy Ngqula, who will share more on this project in terms of its objectives and anticipated outcomes. Big boss, welcome. Good morning. Happy
Hello.
Friday. All those things.
You're the boss here, though. So I'm in your hands. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure.
Okay.
And Africa Matters. I think we can say you've been on a tour to talk about this in the other radio platforms here in South Africa. But what is it, and what necessitated the formation of Africa Matters?
I think we often hear as a cliche that Africans need to come up with African solutions to African problems, right? And I think that what inspired Africa Matters was that we wanted to, as the SABC's global channel, we wanted to create a catalyst for that conversation to happen, right? So that's the real genesis of Africa Matters. Then we decided as we were thinking what themes could we tackle, particularly in the next coming years, but of immediate necessity, though, is to deal with the issues of climate change. And it's also a wide subject matter. And we decided to drill down into the issue specifically of how we finance as Africans our own recovery. You would know that internationally there is an increase in terms of climate change finance, but Africa gets a very small portion of that. And therefore then this means we must decide on our own, take our destiny into our own hands on how we are going to finance our own recovery.
What about climate change and the African continent makes this speak to the core of the values of Channel Africa, specifically feeding into the objectives then of Africa Matters? As you say, the budgets come to us after everybody else has been prioritized, and yet we, even with our carbon emissions, are the lowest contributor to the planet. So talk to us more about that.
I think you hit the nail on the head there when you say that we are the lowest emitters. Right? We're the lowest contributors to the problem, and yet we face the biggest risk. And that's what necessitated this discussion, is to say that instead of going to international monetary organizations with a begging bowl, it's perhaps a constructive step to say, let's gather, let's come up with our own solutions, which is the reason we're inviting development financiers into the discussion. We are inviting policymakers into the discussion, and we're also inviting academia, we're inviting civil society, labor, and business in general to get all of these thought leaders, as well as you and I, to come and chat about solutions. Obviously, you were asking what necessitated this from the Channel Africa perspective. We play a developmental role on the continent. As you know, we are obviously part of the public service broadcaster, the SABC. And for us, that mandate, we take it very seriously. And it was the reason then that we thought that this is a critical issue for the African continent. It must stamp its own authority on solutions that it requires, so that we are able to deal with these matters on our own terms.
So you've in part answered one of the questions that I was going to follow up with in terms of who Channel Africa is going to be partnering with on Africa Matters. Policymakers, you mentioned. But what about them in terms of the criteria that you were looking at in these partners spoke to you or that you were looking for?
Okay, obviously in society there's multiple sectors, right? And you want to hear the multiple voices. I think that's important because if you were to just say, let's talk to the Department of environmental affairs in the context of South Africa. You'll have a singular view there, right, about matters. But it's important that we speak to all the sectors who are involved, because climate change affects you and I as normal humans in the first place, right? When they talk about floods, okay, but it also affects businesses and how they do business. So all of these were taken into account. We're proud to announce that Wits Business School is actually our partner. They are hosting us. The second most important thing, though, for me, is that we often go to these summits, these conferences, and you find that you never really know where to find solutions and outcomes that came out of those discussions. So Wits Business School will craft our outcomes document, which will have steps to say what are the follow-ups and how do we measure success and what do we need to do next. And I think that that's going to be very helpful in ensuring that we're not creating a talk shop, but we're creating a solution that's going to be sustainable.
Right. Talking of outcomes, then, what are you hoping the overall outcome of this platform of Africa Matters will be?
We're hoping that African countries will begin to say, where is the convergence in terms of creating policies that enable the environment, okay, for us to really implement the solutions around climate change finance from our own perspective.
The listener, the ordinary listener, how do they become a part of these conversations and maybe following what's happening with the other stakeholders who are conversating or making their contributions? Will this be updated on our website?
Yes, it will be. And but also you can just simply send an email to Elena at Channel Africa and that's your RSVP. You're welcome to come through. This is not a project that's going to charge people to come and sit, listen, participate. It's more important that society participates in this very important discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you, boss.
Cool.
Thank you for your leadership here. Joining us is Channel Africa's business manager, Mr. Dicksy Ngqula, talking about Africa Matters, a new platform that the channel is launching. And this is about telling African stories from an African perspective. And in this, we aim to highlight the continent's successes and challenges, not just the doom and gloom that we hear a lot of times in our news stories.